got an injury update on Luka Doncic, and that's how we'll kick off Mavericks today. Harrison Graham, Jeffrey Cooper Steen. Coop, no concern, the phrase being used as the Mavericks superstar is expected to be fine, and plenty of time before the season opener 3 weeks from today. So, barring a setback, he should be good to go when they play the Spurs in 3 weeks.
Yes, he should be good to go. They said they were going to reevaluate in a week on Monday, so that would be next Monday. And so he definitely will miss the first preseason game. The Mavs already announced that. I assume he's going to miss the second as well, but then he'll probably play the third, maybe the fourth. We'll show you the preseason schedule here in just a second, but this is pretty much what we expected to be the case. We didn't think this was going to be a serious injury, and it more seems that way, that after confirmation of the MRI and all that came back clean. So it feels like this is nothing to worry about at all.
Yeah, certainly a good sign. It's still kind of like, really, like right as camp gets here, he gets dinged up. But hopefully nothing too serious to be worried about. That certainly seems to be the case. You mentioned that preseason schedule. Not going to play in the Grizzlies game. We'll see about the next three. I kind of think, like, you sit him out against the Jazz.
That's what I think.
Travels to L.A., play him in that game, but then if you want to play him against the Bucks. The NBA is a little different from the NFL with how they approach the preseason, so we'll see how much Luka and, Kyrie, some of these other big-name guys play. You'd like to play him a little bit, especially with Clay, and get a few game reps with your core guys together.
Yeah.
But I also don't think it's like that catastrophic. The first few weeks of the regular season are going to be a feeling out process anyway.
Either in the Clippers or the Bucks game, the Mavs will use that as their dress rehearsal, where the starters will play 2.5, maybe even 3 quarters. The NBA, usually teams have one game where they do that, so I'm curious to see which one the Mavs choose. My guess is it would be the Clippers game, but it could be the Bucks game as well, because that's still a week out from opening night at home against the Spurs. So that'll just be up to Jason Kidd, but I do think he'll play in the preseason at some point.
Yeah, and if he does, that means he's fully ready
All
to
good.
go. What is your concern level with Luka's injury scale of 1 to 10? I'll go 2 instead of 1, just because it's like something. Like, he ended last season really beat up. You don't love him starting training camp with something, but it doesn't sound like something that's going to linger as long as they just let it properly heal up. So I'll go 2. It's not anything majorly to be concerned about, but I'll give it a little bit higher than just the basic 1.
Yeah, I'll probably go a 2, maybe even a 3, just because he has had calf issues in the past, and it's that same left calf that has bothered him a couple of times. But it's nothing to be overly concerned about, because if the Mavs aren't concerned, then I'm not too concerned there.
You also have a couple other injury items here. Maxi Kleber, Kessler, Edwards both have sprained ankles. Obviously, Kleber, nothing new, unfortunately. He's a little bit fickle with injuries. Edwards on a 2-way contract. That's nothing to really be too concerned about. He's not a guy who's going to be helping you, especially early in the season anyway. But just something to monitor, especially with Kleber, who I think will have a role on this team. There might be some nights he's a DNP coach's decision, but there will be nights he plays 20 minutes. So, it is what it is. I think you kind of treat him as like icing on a cake at this point, Coop. Like, when he plays, it's bonus. When he doesn't, you can't really bank on him being a factor throughout the course of a season. So we'll see how it plays out.
Whether it's a knee, whether it's a shoulder last year in the playoffs, whether it's this that's popped up here at the start of training camp, it just feels like he's always got something wrong with him, and he just can't be relied on as part of this rotation. If you have him, I think that's great, because he offers you some versatility and he offers you some shooting from the outside. But at this point, I'm just not relying on him to be available for this team. If he's there, that's awesome. If not, you just go with what you plan with.
Yeah, you can't operate, like, you can't be thinking big picture like, okay, well, Maxi's going to be doing this when we go into this playoff series.
Like, no, he's not.
It's like, well, if he's available, he can help you in this area, but you got to be fully prepared for him not to be. So definitely something to consider throughout the season for Jason Kidd. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. The season is here. We're going to have you covered here on Mavericks Today. Year-round coverage, in-season analysis, news, injury updates, rumors that pop up. We'll hit all of that. Of course, in the offseason, we have you covered with free agency and draft stuff as well. We're going to try to do as many watch parties as we can this year. And, hey, thank you guys so much.
Yes,
we crossed 30,000 subscribers. The goal is to get that done by training camp, so here we are. Appreciate you. Let's keep the train moving, and subscribe if you haven't already.
All right, Harrison, I wanted to pivot to this. Jason Kidd had an interesting quote. He had an interview with Mark Stein, and Kidd said that this is the deepest Mavs team ever, even more so than the 2011 title team.
Interesting comments here that we'll read to you. Kids saying it's a great problem to have. I do think it's a little deeper than the 2011 team. There's a lot of ways you can go. Yes, we have to keep these guys happy, but when you talk about one goal of winning a championship, everyone has to sacrifice, and no one knows that better than Jason Kidd. I think that was one of those things that the only guy who didn't have to sacrifice was Dirk because everything ran through Dirk. Well, this team isn't really built the same. I mean, if there was a Dirk on this team, it's obviously Luka, but that team didn't have a Kyrie,
exactly,
a top 25 player in the NBA. It had a lot of really good role players and high-level starters.
It had a Sean Marion and a Tyson Chandler, but there was no Kyrie.
No Kyrie, and you could argue no Clay. I mean, maybe Clay is like the jet of this team. I'm not sure, but I mean, I think from a depth standpoint, we've talked about the Scoop. Like, other than Markieff Morris, everybody can play in a pinch. Now, again, you don't want to play Dwight Powell, but like over the course of 82, he can give you some fill-in minutes, and it's not a complete disaster. Now in the playoffs, it kind of is, but let's say you even take him out of it. Your next 13 are pretty damn deep.
Absolutely.
Dude. You got your starters. I mean, Hardy's probably your 13th guy, or I guess Prosper probably is your 13th guy. Hardy your 12th, but I mean, your top 11 are all guys that could play playoff minutes, and you'd feel comfortable putting them in the game.
Absolutely. Like, on any given night, given who's sitting out and who may be out of the rotation, this team truly is 10 deep. They have a full 10 they can go to and fully trust. Now, of course, that in the playoffs, that probably does shrink to 8. But during the regular season, you're going to need a bunch of guys to step up at times when maybe you wouldn't expect. And the Mavs do have that. I think they're one of the deepest, if not the deepest team from top to bottom in the NBA this year, and they're certainly going to need it throughout the year.
Yeah, they've got a good blend of like star talent and depth, and this is why like I am a firm believer, and the Celtics are an exception because they've just gone crazy luxury tax bill team, but I think you build with 2 max contract guys and pieces around them. Like I don't think the big 3 max contract thing works anymore. Because like you look at Phoenix is a good example from last year. Like unless you have the 3 perfect guys that fit together, your roster just stinks because
100%.
The guys after that just aren't good enough. Whereas the Mavs, they've got their 2 big contract guys and a lot of mid-tier contract guys, and they've built this thing well, and we'll see if that translates to winning at a high level. And hey, Klay Thompson, we know his jersey. He's rocking 31. I guess Jet's not getting his jersey retired anytime soon. Go get the 31 Klay Thompson jerseys today at chatsports.com/Klay. That is chatsports.com/Klay. Go pick one up right now. In the comments and in the description, the link is there, chatsports.com/Klay. Let's talk about this now, Coop. Jason Kidd saying one of his goals this year is to have Luka bring the ball up less. I think mostly just lower that usage rate.
Absolutely.
That's a stat that was always talked about with James Harden in Houston. Like his usage rate, they need to be gassed for the playoffs. That wasn't really the case with Luka last year. Maybe he ran out of that some steam in the finals, but I think that was almost more a result of injuries.
But the injuries, you could say, could be contributed to his high usage as well.
Absolutely. And look, you want him to be – this is a short and long-term play. It helps you for this season to try and reach your ultimate goal. But you also want to be have a guy who in his mid-30s is still playing at a high level. So if they can lower his usage rate, that would be very critical. Here's what Jason Kidd said. He's always felt he's had to do everything. This year I'm going to talk to him about hopefully letting someone else bring the ball up, getting him the ball in different spots on the floor without having that challenge of harassment when he has to bring the ball up. I think that'll make him stronger. We'll see what he says. And
I thought that part at the end was funny because when he looked at Stein and he said that, he kind of gave like a raised eyebrow. And I said the same thing. It's like, I don't think Luka will be too happy about giving up that duty because he wants to be the guy that initiates everything. And I think he'll be pretty hesitant to give it up, but maybe Kidd can convince him a couple of more possessions to come off the ball and just get the ball in a different spot.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where I wonder if you're trying to lower his usage rate, maybe it's more of, okay, we're going to play him 2 to 3 minutes less per night this year. Like, I can't remember what he averaged last year. I want to say it was like 38 minutes. Can you get him down to 36?
Yep.
That could be another way you can do that. But, if I'm pitching to Luka, if I'm Jason, like, hey, we're trying to go on another deep playoff run, and that's when you are going to be initiating everything. Like November, December, January, let's scale back
Exactly.
the volume of just reps where you're having to bring it up every single time, and then you are going to be in complete control and hopefully healthier down the stretch and in the playoffs when it really, really matters. And the good news for Dallas is they've got guys who can handle the basketball, run even if it's not running the offense, just the dribbling to across the timeline. If you take 15 of those away per game from Luka, like that adds up over the course of a season.
And
so.
I do think, like, Kid made a good point. When Luka's bringing the ball up the court, it's not like he's bringing it up without pressure. Like, they are trying to harass him and trying to be physical with him and get the ball
him
off
at
of him.
midcourt, yeah.
So it certainly does take a toll physically. And that's kind of like what they like about Najee Marshall is they think he can do that. They tried some of that with P.J. Washington last year. It didn't go so well at times.
A couple times, too.
Yeah, exactly. So they do have options there. But at the end of the day, I do think his usage rate does need to go down. I think it would contribute greatly to his health later in the season, and I also think that in general, the Mavs have more options, so might as well use them and keep those guys happy as well.
Yeah, I think you've got the guys who can do it. You want to limit the physical toll he takes, especially early on. Like, he's coming off a just banged up playoff run.
Absolutely.
Like, let's have him be healthy at the new year, and when the games really start to matter in the second half of the season. I mean, last year he's right near the top of the league, and I would argue it really was probably the most, just because Embiid's not dribbling it up and down the court every possession like Luka is. So they've got to get that number down.
And what's crazy is this is down a couple of percent from the 22-23 season where he was at like 38%. So I think if they could get it down a couple more percentage points, get him down to around 32%, I think that would be a pretty good number. It's still very high. And look, I'm not saying I don't want Luka with the ball in his hands, because we all know what he can do. He's an absolute magician with it. And he needs to have it the most of anybody else on the Mavs. But at the end of the day, you just have to think about the long-term aspirations of this team, which is to win a championship. And the best way to do that is to have Luka healthy and fresh and ready to go in the postseason.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What do you guys think? 34.5% usage rate for Luka. O for over, U for under. I'd probably guess over.
I would too.
We'll see how it all shakes out.
I did love Jason Kidd's, like, it wasn't sarcastic, but he was like, yeah, in the back of his mind, he knows that that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
we'll see what he says.
Yeah, wishful thinking.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, we're getting closer and closer. Subscribe if you want to join our coverage for the season. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.
Peace.